This is a 4th generation Honda CRV, and yes, they may well have the reputation of being extremely reliable cars, but do you happen to know the few common problems that they tend to have? No? Well, good job you clicked on this video, because I'm going to take you through them and show you everything that you need to know to go out there and get the best example possible. Let's go. So let's kick off on the engine front. Now this changed a little bit when the cars were facelifted in 2015, but initially we could get it with either a 2-litre petrol, as this car has, or a 2.2 litre diesel. Now I know depending on where you are in the world that might differ a little bit. American viewers, we're going to talk about some of your engines and some of their problems in just a few moments, but at least here in the UK initially we got the 2 litre and we got the 2.2 litre diesel. Now I know what you're thinking, the 2.2 litre turbo diesel might be the better bet for a car of this type. I did think the same when I was looking to buy one of these cars, but be aware that those engines are no longer ULEZ compliant. That's these ultra low emission areas that are popping up all over the UK, so be aware that those diesel engines could become a bit obsolete soon if you need to drive into big cities. Now in terms of reliability, those diesels tend to be pretty solid. Sure, they can have the occasional DPF and EGR problem, but what modern diesel doesn't? It's not a reason to avoid that engine. Now the 2 litre petrol on the other hand, well, this is going to be quite a short segment because this is likely one of the most reliable engines ever built. Bulletproof, as they say. Now one thing that might freak you out a little bit when you're viewing one of these, if I can get the oil cap off, is that they no longer fit breathers on these engines. So quite often if the car's been laying around, any moisture is going to rise to the top of the engine and you're going to see it in the oil cap. So if it's a bit of a Mayo sandwich in there, don't sweat it as long as it cleans up after a good test drive. At this point I'm not sure if I should be frightened or not, but a massive dog has turned up and I've never met it before. He must like CRVs. Look at the size of this dog. Who does he belong to? So though not a huge problem, something to bear in mind is that these CRVs seem to have an appetite for batteries of all things. We always seem to be swapping these out. Now I think it's because it's got these nice headlights that stay on as you get into the house at night. It's got the electric folding mirrors, it's got stop start. On the higher spec models you've got that auto closing tailgate, electric as well. And all of those features, when they're found on a German Audi or BMW or something, often the car has a secondary battery for that stuff or a much larger battery to begin with. On the CRV, you kind of don't. It's a normal size car battery. And I think when all those features are lumbered onto it, it can tend to make them expire a little bit more quickly. So for this next segment, I kind of need the help from you guys here because I read all over the internet and I've seen in a few videos people commenting saying that the AC compressors can go bad on these and you need to be really careful about it. Now definitely on the Mark IIs, I've done a video on this, on the Mark IIs the AC compressor could go bad, it had that Black Death thing that would happen, but on the Mark IVs in real life, I've never heard of or seen an AC compressor go bad. Maybe you can tell me differently. Comment below if you've had one of these cars and had an AC compressor go bad. So fast forward to 2015 and that 2.2 diesel engine is no more. The 2 litre lived on, you're still going to get them post 2015, but the 2.2 non-ULEZ compliant, goodbye, that disappeared. It was replaced with a 1.6 Earthdreams engine. Now there was 2 different variations of that depending on if you were looking at a 2-wheel drive or a 4-wheel drive Mark IV CRV. The 2-wheel drive got the 120 brake horsepower version, meanwhile the 4-wheel drive got the 160 brake horsepower engine. Now that common theme of robust reliability does continue on with these engines as well, thankfully, although there is one thing to make you aware of, and that is the oil pressure switch, which sits just, I'm pointing as if you guys can see or the camera's going to move, but it sits just at the back left hand side of the engine. I'll add in a little clip of it from my engine here. I know it's a 2 litre, but let's just pretend it's a 1.6 diesel. Check that oil pressure switch isn't leaking. If it is, it's not a difficult job to change it, but bring that up with the seller, save yourself a bit of money. It's a good negotiation tool. So next up, I've been saving this one, but there is a pretty major problem with these CRVs. Couldn't believe this when I found it. This may well make you think twice about buying one. I'm sorry about this. But before I get on to what this, quite frankly, catastrophic problem is, quick favour ask from you guys. We create these buyer's guides for every type of car. So if you tend to buy cars second hand, please do hit that subscribe button. And also, give this video a like, because that's how other prospective CRV buyers can find it and get value from it too. Anyway, let me show you this problem. Why do they need to make the horn so squeaky? Final problem before we head out on that test drive, and that is get into these front footwells, go under the protective mats and make sure the carpets aren't wet. More often than not, all it tends to be is that the rainwater is getting in behind this front scuttle here and it just needs resealed. Pretty easy fixed, not the end of the world, but again, a really good negotiation point. Keep that one in mind. Oh, and if like mine, it's a slightly older CRV you're looking at, double check these wheels, because chances are there's going to be a bit of corrosion on them. Oh, down a bit. They don't tend to get curved very often because of these big chunky sidewalls, therefore they don't tend to get refurbed very often either. Again, another really good negotiation point to bring up with that seller. Keep a bit of money in your pocket. There's that wind again. Before we begin, and as I refit my mic, I want to share one interesting little Honda quirk with you, and it's the fact that they all sound really weird in reverse. Get a listen to this. Hopefully you guys can hear that. Right, that's quite enough serious stuff, this buyer's guide. Let's get back to it. So the first problem is before we even set off, and it's to do with the clutch. Now my old Mark II CRV and this Mark IV does this, and I've heard from other owners it will do it as well, and that is a little bit of clutch judder when the car is stone cold. So when you first start it in the morning and go to pull away, you get a little bit of judder off of the clutch while that friction material is cold. Once everything gets up to temperature, once everything's hot, it doesn't do it at all. So look out for that when it's hot, but if it does it a little when it's cold, not an issue. So usually when I'm making these videos, I'm using a car that's been loaned to me, so it's quite hard to give an idea of what it's like to live with. It's more just about how to fix them and the common problems, but given that this is actually my personal daily driver, I can give you guys a little bit more insight as to what it's been like to actually live with. Honestly, I've been super impressed by this CRV all round. If you're thinking about buying one, I'd say go ahead, I really would, because obviously, as you're finding out in this buyer's guide, they are really quite reliable. More on that to come, but they really are quite reliable. And also, just overall, the practicality is insane. I can get my big dog in the boot, I can still get 5 adults inside it. Now, in terms of refinement, this is an area that I have been particularly impressed with when it comes to the CRV. Now, if you buy a Porsche Cayenne or a Range Rover or something along those lines, you expect a certain level of refinement. Of course you do, you're spending that money, you expect it. But when it comes to the CRV, I wouldn't class this as an overly expensive car at all. But what you get in terms of the noise, vibration, harshness, it's truly impressive. So let's start with the suspension. This is one of the smoothest cars that I've ever driven. I'm on a road here that I know is quite rutted, pretty imperfect, as most of the roads in the UK are these days, but the CRV just irons out bumps. The damping is seriously impressive for a car of this budget. In terms of road noise and just general creaks and rattles, you would be impressed driving one of these cars even if you came from a German alternative. It's that good. I really am impressed with this. I found one, guys, a facelift CRV. He's getting away from me though. Do you think if we catch him, he'll join our video? Sorry if this is your dad or something. Now, one thing that I did forget to mention for you American viewers is the petrol engine that you get is a little bit different from what we got here in the UK, where we got the 2 litre, you got the 2.4 litre, which had a bit more power. But there was one problem in particular to be aware of there, and it was the VTC actuator. That could go bad, and the symptom was on cold start, you would hear the engine rattle as it started up. There was a technical bulletin issued by Honda for this to recall the cars and get it put right, but make sure that car's cold when you go and view it so you can spot if that hasn't been carried out. Now, if manual was not your kind of thing, you could also get an automatic gearbox in these CRVs. Pre-facelift, pre-2015 that is, you were going to get the 5-speed torque converter gearbox. Post-facelift, you're going to get the 9-speed ZF derived gearbox. Now, I'm glad to say that theme of reliability continues on with the automatic gearboxes as well. They're perfectly reliable, no big problems to make you aware of. That isn't to say, however, that the odd one doesn't tend to have problems, so always be vigilant, pay attention to how it's changing gear, look for any harsh gear shifts, particularly when going from first to second gear, and also look out for any juddering as it's coming up to a gear change as well. Any of that happening, I would just walk away, find yourself another CRV, because as I mentioned, there are plenty out there that don't have these problems. And there you have it. You now have all the tips to go off and buy yourself the perfect Honda CRV. But how do we score it on our reliability leaderboard? Well, let's face it, it's always going to score pretty high. I really struggled to pull problems together for this buyer's guide, and that is exactly why I bought one of these cars, because for my daily, I just need something effortless, something that I know isn't going to be costing me a lot of money day in, day out. That's why I bought one of these. So, overall, everything taken into account, we score the CRV a massive 9.5 out of 10. No car's perfect, they all have their problems, and that's exactly why we make these videos, to help you out and save you money. So please do hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you for the next video.